Hi, I'm Roxanne Howe Murphy. I am international bestseller author of Deep Living with the Enneagram, Recovering Your True Nature, also Underneath Your Personality, Discover Greater Well-Being through Deep Living with the Enneagram, and also Deep Coaching, using the Enneagram as a catalyst for profound change, which is a great resource for professionals. And I teach and have been a retreat leader, and I am the co-founder, board emeriti right now, of the Deep Living Lab, which you've got to check out. So you can check out my personal website, author website, roxannehowemurphy.com and deeplivinglab.org. And I'll tell you, I was just with Kim Sorrelle. I'll tell you, we had a great time. We were really exploring interesting, I think, internal, external, what it's like to be a human being. That's really what we're talking about. And it's, life is messy. And so Kim and I had a great conversation. I was so happy to be on her podcast. And I love the work that she's doing, bringing forth love and inspiration and connecting people, helping people connect to the beauty in the world. So listen to the podcast. I'd love to have you listen and make sure you're following Kim.
Welcome to the show. I am Kim Sorrelle. I'm a writer, a speaker, a coach. I do a lot of things in life, but my favorite thing to do is meet people and meet new people and meet exciting people. And I have met this woman, Roxanne, who is my guest today, Roxanne Howe Murphy, who you're going to want to stay tuned for this. She has got wisdom to share like none other. And she's done so much in life, international best-selling author. She speaks, she does everything. She's actually Dr. Roxanne. And so anyway, I just want you to help me welcome her to the show. Roxanne, welcome.
Thanks, Kim. I'm so delighted to be here and to be with your listeners and your viewers.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm so happy that you are here. And so we talked a little bit off air for a minute, and I said, I think people, when they know you, they'll want to know what you're doing. And so I'd love to hear about 8-year-old Roxanne.
Yeah. Well, 8-year-old Roxanne was living on a little farm in the Midwest. At that time, I think my older sister had probably already left, or was getting close to leaving. She was older than me, quite a bit older. And I lived in a Victorian farmhouse. And that Victorian farmhouse, I had a room upstairs. Sometimes I was terrified to be upstairs by myself because I thought there were ghosts there. But one of the things that I really cherish in terms of memories of my early childhood is that it was an old farm, and it was called a milk house. And that milk house had a little step out in front, and I would go out at night and I'd look up at the stars, and I was so in awe of the dark sky, of the the moon, the star, the millions of stars, because there was no light pollution there at that time. And I always had this awe and this question, like, well, who am I in this world, in this universe? How do I show up? How do I like, what's my place? How will I find my place? And in the environment that I lived in, it looked like the options were limited. And so I had to really keep myself open to what else would be available for me. So I ended up, going to school, and of course, and then I worked in the disability community for the first part of my professional life. I worked at United Cerebral Palsy, one of the affiliates, and I led programs that it helped to bring together people who did not have a disability with those who did. And many of those who did, who were coming to United Cerebral Palsy, were very, with cerebral palsy, they were very involved with their, their legs, their arms, their speech. A lot of times, there's a lot of disability there. But I just knew that there was something there that would be of value. Let me tell you a story about one of the clients there. Her name is Terry. She passed not too long ago, actually. She was a little younger than me. And she was so involved, Kim, with her cerebral palsy. She was in a chair, and such a cool thing. She just had this vibrant spirit. She was nonverbal. Her arms and her legs were kind of all over the place. And yet she had this smile, and people were attracted to her, sometimes a little scared because they didn't know what to do, right? Because she was nonverbal. But she was a light. And she indicated that in a way that she wanted to share her story. So at that time, the technology was not very evolved. And she had what's called a language board that sat across her wheelchair. And she then had a pointer stick that came from a headband. And one of my staff sat with her, and a couple of people over a period of maybe 3 months or so sat with her as she pointed out her story. I mean, she spelled out her story one letter at a time. And It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. One, she was so motivated to share this. She was so thrilled to have somebody be with her that much and listen to her. And then, so the story was completed, and we said, it can't stop at this story. Let's create Terry, do you want to create a video? So we did a video of her, and to where her story was voiced, by a staff member, but we saw Terry. And you know what she really wanted, Kim? She wanted the simple things of life that weren't available. She actually, because her mother couldn't handle her because of, she was an adult and just too big. She lived in a nursing home. And at that time, gosh, maybe 23 years old, 22. So she just wanted the simple things, but she also wanted something else. Her message was, I really want people to see me. I want people to know that I'm much more than what they see. And so the title of the video became, don't just look. Don't just look. Know that there's so much more to me. And I said, so she inspired me. In fact, when I started teaching at the university, in the therapeutic area, I wrote my very first book. It was a textbook, and I dedicated it to her because she had, and I still have things that she made that, I just feel so connected to her, even though I haven't seen her for, many years.
Wow.
Yeah. So
what a story. I mean, that is amazing. And I think too often people see people with whatever disability and want to turn away, or afraid to look, afraid to notice, or, don't want to make a deal, or just don't know how to act.
Don't know. They don't know.
Right?
It's like an innocent thing. I don't know what to do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're so right. And then there's that embarrassment, and maybe I'm going to mess up. And when really the person would, for the most part, I can't speak, across the board, but many people would appreciate just being recognized, and, some interaction, whatever might be appropriate. If it's going down the street, a hello, a smile, or if it's in a, more social setting in some way, sit down, even if what you can do is just sit there and be with a person. If the nonverbal communication is present, there's so much that can be communicated, and this is so much of what you're about. And me too. We both have messages of love, right? And you can feel through presence, through just being there, that's the sense of connectedness. Like, here's another human being, and I don't know very much about this human being, but there's a precious, tender soul here And just like all of us, a person who's been hurt, a person who's has joys, a person who wants to, to bring themselves out into the world the best that they can. And so if we can remember that about other people, we might be able to remember it more about ourselves, right?
Oh my God. Yeah, which is so important, right? But I love that. Thank you so much for telling that story because it's so true. Everybody wants to be seen.
Yes.
Right? We
Yes.
all need to be seen. And so don't look away, smile, wave, say hello, whatever it is, it's okay. It's interesting to me too, how so many people with disabilities, it's not like they don't have a mind.
Oh, that's right.
Their minds can be at different levels, but yeah, everybody's mind is at a different level. But it's not like they don't have a mind. So recognize that they are a valuable human being, that they are a brother, a sister, or whatever you want to call them, but they're part of us. And so be kind and show some love.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I learned working in the disability community and through Terry and others is that, it's interesting. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but disabling conditions often can lead to other gifts and other assets, other experiences that if we're just going about our day, blah, 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 we might miss. But can be, I'm not saying across the board, but a lot of people that I've met have said, there was a guy who was on my graduate courses and he had a spinal cord injury. And, for years he was really angry. And then over time, he became very involved and an advocate. And, he came to accept, himself. And he later said to me, I never thought I would say this, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the condition that I have. Because I've had such a precious life. I've learned so many precious things. And it's like, oh my gosh, and wow. It's humbling, Kim. It's humbling. And it taught me so much. And it really kind of led me to my focus was on wellness and therapeutic programs for people with disabilities. And then I thought, well, what about those of us who are not yet disabled, or visibly disabled, whatever? And how do we begin to recognize our gifts and what's not always on the surface of life, but the deeper aspects of ourselves? How do we connect with that? And so that has led really, to the work that I'm doing now as a coach, as a teacher, retreat leader, like you, and almost everybody that I've worked with over the last 25 years as a coach has had such an appreciation for being seen, because so much, when we can really see another person, it opens up channels. Mm-hmm. It does open up channels, and then it gets reflected back, and perhaps we are see ourselves in new ways as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's not just people with visible disabilities, but it is all of us. We do all want to be seen, and there are probably times in everybody's life where they feel unseen. In whatever situation they're in. And I think about like high school kids that all the peer pressure, all the whatever that goes on in a high school, that I personally had a fabulous, incredible high school experience. I was in everything. I had great friends and I enjoyed every minute of it. And, but I have a granddaughter who, man, she couldn't wait to get out of there. She felt like she was completely unseen, like she was alone, like there wasn't anybody there for her. And she tried to sort of fit in, but she just maybe wasn't made for that school, or school wasn't made for her. I don't know what, but
Yeah,
she's wonderful and she's gifted. Like she's
yeah,
this artist and she sings but she definitely felt unseen, and it has had a big effect on her life.
yeah. That happens for a lot of kids, unfortunately. And, there's also, with the pandemic and kids studying at home, and that, that changed a lot in terms of their ability to kind of connect and feel part of and feel seen, right? I've got a grandchild who now through high school and taking next steps, but is on the autism spectrum, and brilliant kid. And, it's hard. And I think all these, autism is just showing up more and more, among people, and even as adults, people who didn't recognize it. Oh, maybe I am, on the spectrum. They've been diagnosed in some way. And a lot of times it's hard to feel seen, because like even for themselves, they're not always sure what they can show, of themselves. So, we're so amazing as human beings, and there's so many different aspects to us, and so many different versions of being a human.
It's so true. It's so
It
true.
really
I mean,
is. Yeah.
put 20 people in a room, you have 20 completely unique, different people, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it is interesting. And so you got into this work, which your earlier work, fabulous, working with people like Terry, that's amazing. And then you decided to kind of take a shift. Was there something that happened that made you want to change how you looked at the world or what you were doing or whatever?
Well, I was at the university. I was teaching, and I had a good life. If you looked at it on the outside, it would look like, wow, and I had always kind of wanted to be in the university environment teaching, and I love working with students. And I think it was really there that I realized how many people, and because we had older students as well as, just out of high school, who felt so alone, feeling so alone, because feeling like the inner struggles that I have, nobody else is having it. Look at her life is great, his life is great, their life is great, whatever. And I'm the one, and nobody would understand me. So I started really hearing that on my one-on-one conversations and even in the classroom. But I decided, I had always told my students, the point at which I feel like I need to do something different, and like I fulfilled my mission here, I will shift. And so I stepped out of higher ed, not knowing what I was going to do. It was big, scary, big, scary step for me. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. A friend of mine said, you'd make a great coach. And I said, oh, what's that? And, this is when coaching was still, really relatively new. So I went to coaching school, had my doctorate, went to coaching school. And I started working with, I started building a coaching practice. And I thought, I'm not getting to stuff. I'm not getting to like core stuff here to make sustainable changes. And then I was also feeling like, there's something off in me, and I don't know what it is. And so I had my own coach who said, hey, in fact, he'd been a teacher at one time of mine. He said, take another look at the Enneagram. And I said, yeah. I said, I was introduced to it 10 years ago or so, and I was kind of turned off. I was kind of turned off. I thought it was kind of negative. And so he said, yeah, try this approach. So I went to a retreat with a couple of master teachers, and I went, oh, and I had started reading more of their work. It was the late Don Richard Riso, who was became a mentor and a colleague, friend of mine, and Russ Hudson, who's still active and very active. in the Enneagram world. And something started shifting for me. But it was on the first night of a week-long retreat. I thought, I'll go to this and maybe it'll help. Maybe it'll help me. Maybe it'll help my clients. I don't know. And oh, Kim, I still get shivers with this. This kind of thing didn't happen to me very often. I'm sitting there. There's 60 people in the room. I feel arms, hands around my shoulders and kind of shaking me. And I heard, "This is your work." I was like, here I am in the middle of 60 people. And I didn't even know what the work was actually at that point. And then I heard it again. It was very visceral. I felt hands here. And there wasn't anybody behind me, and I was shaking. "This is your work." So I had tears running down my face. Of course, I didn't know what it meant. This is your work. And I said, yes. And that was about 25 years ago. And so it's been my work in some version of it ever since. And it saved my life. Because, my own experience was, I felt like there's something not right. There's something not right. Why can't I have some momentum in my life? Why can't I just move things ahead? I wrote books that I just left, in the file cabinet. I started things, but I just didn't have the momentum to carry them through. And I also had low-level depression. And so even with this externally great life, there was something that was really kind of off for me. And what I realized is that what I thought was me was simply a pattern or a series of patterns. And that there were motivators, there were dynamics underneath my awareness that were kind of driving those patterns of including depression, not feeling like I had enough energy or enough, whatever it was going to take to allow me to be out in the world in the way I could see myself being, that actually made me feel my brain got really kind of foggy. And that was also a pattern that's related to what I identify with on the Enneagram. And as I began to work with that and recognize that is not me, I share that with about 1/9 of the population. And by the way, it's not a life sentence, because I thought I had a life sentence. Like, oh, this is the way life is. And there's not much I can do to change it. Even though I had done a lot of inner work, I'd gone to, a lot of different kinds of therapists and growth groups, but nobody was getting to the core of it until then. And that's what turned my life around, really.
Wow. I wonder how many people are in that same kind of headspace, heart space, where they can look around and see. It's always easier from the outside looking in, right? To see people's giftings, to see their value,
right?
To see whatever it is about them. Much harder to do looking at ourselves, but it shouldn't be, but it is.
And it is.
Yeah. So how many people are feeling exactly like that? Like, other people are more valuable, or where is my place, and why can't I do this, and this person's doing that, and where am I, and all those things that lead to not the happiest of lives.
Well, that's right. And so if you look at the statistics, health statistics, and we won't go into a lot of detail, but the numbers of people that have addictions or are oriented to, getting close to addiction, drugs or alcohol or whatever it might be, television, sex, there's a lot of different kinds of addictions. There's a lot of ways that we leave ourselves because we don't know how to resolve that inner angst, that inner discomfort. And, other ways of of kind of leaving ourselves. We just get so busy. We get so busy, and we're helping everybody else, but we're forgetting about ourselves. But I don't want to get in here because it doesn't feel good, so I'm going to help out here. Or I need to look good for everybody else, even though I feel like a fraud inside. I mean, most people experience some level of inner angst and discomfort and like an inner divide, like how I show up out here is not how I feel in here. That's what I call an inner divide. And this work that I so love and so believe in, because I would love to help people reduce the level of unnecessary pain. There's a lot of pain in life. There's loss. There's so many things that can cause pain, but there's unnecessary pain. And when we think that how we show up on the outside, well, that must be who we are, but something's not right inside, and there's this inner divide, and that's how life is. That's painful, and it ends up creating unintended consequences. I mean, we might end up making some decisions from that divided place rather than from a place of more integration, where we're really connected to what's going on inside. We come to accept ourselves, connect to our hearts, which I think is really one of the hardest things to do, is to really connect with our hearts.
Yeah, I think that's true. Sometimes I wonder if babies are born automatically connected in a way. And then as we grow, people tell us who we are. And so we take on what people tell us who we are and who we're not, and what we're capable of, what we're not capable of, who we should marry, where we should go to school, just all this stuff. Right. And
right.
So you lose the real you in there, because everybody else is developing who you are.
Yeah, that's a huge, huge factor. Now, the thing about babies, what we've learned is that when babies come in, and the healthier the environment is for little ones, babies, and the more that the caretakers can see them as whole precious beings, they're going to have a better start than little ones who don't have that kind of nurturing and guidance. But what we've learned is that there's actually a sense of separation from our whole self, from our true self, when we come into this world. It's kind of part of the process, part of the journey. And so we have both a sense of separation from our truer nature. Some would put that into, religious terms, but it's just a separation from really who we are and we have a pre-wiring, we could say it. So a temperament that is attuned to certain things in the environment, and then is not so connected to other things. So we're attuned to, mommy needs me to take care of her. Okay. That gets developed from not only the inside, but from the outside. So we're kind of dealing with two different forces here. And as we are growing up, and then we become adults, and I'm still kind of taking care of my mother because, I don't know what she'd do without me. And it's not like there's anything wrong with taking care of your mom or supporting your mom. I'm not saying that. But if it's like, I have to do this to be okay, then I'm going to lose myself if my focus is, and that's just one of many examples. So then it becomes, well, of course you would feel divided inside. Of course you would hurt. And of course it would feel like you'd be so selfish if you didn't just focus on her. Right. So that comes up, and you feel so guilty if you start paying attention to yourself. And yet that's part of the journey. I say the spiritual journey for a person, for certain people. This isn't across the board. About 1/9 of the population would probably relate to this.
Yeah.
and learning to incorporate my own needs, develop my own interest, develop my boundaries, as a way of having more health and finding my own sources of joy, and creativity and what it is that lights me up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, wow. I love that. So can you just tell everybody what the Enneagram is in case nobody has ever heard of it before, which is hard to imagine because it seems to be everywhere. But if you could do that, that'd be great.
Sure. I'd love 3 hours, but in 5 minutes, the Enneagram is a way of becoming more self-aware. That's one. It's an incredibly deep body of wisdom. And what it shows us is that there are 9 different points, 9 different sets of patterns, 9 different worldviews that are revealed on the Enneagram. And the worldview that any of us have feels like, well, that should be everybody's worldview because that's part of our wiring and what we've, kind of grown up with, and the patterns reflect that, and we get support or not support for our patterns. But what it tells us is that, one, there's no one path to our healing. There's no one way that we love. There's no one way that because we're wired so differently, even though we're all connected, we're wired differently. So there's, when people say, well, there's just here's the answer, do these 5 steps and you'll have it. And I did that for years. I had self-help books on my bedroom floor. Okay, well, this one says do this and this and this and this. Okay, all right, let me try that. Well, yeah, some of this was good, but maybe it didn't stick. It's like, well, it was written from a different perspective, somebody else's approach. So the other thing it shows us is that we have these patterns. They're called types, but some colleagues of mine have just come out with some work that I really agree with. I've never liked the word type because it feels like it puts you in a box, and there are sets of patterns. They're dynamic, and below those sets of patterns, which are the personality, by the way, that's the personality. That it's a kind of our default mechanism. So I see it as it's a coping mechanism because, when we talk about love, I'm going to connect this up. When we talk about love, it's like, how do I really, what's the authentic experience of love? Well, that comes from the heart. And we've all had our hearts hurt, right, Kim? Mm-hmm. Every one of us has felt betrayed. We betrayed ourselves, has felt hurt, has felt guilt, a lot of the heart-oriented experiences say, I don't want to feel that again. So what do? We shut down. Our hearts shut down. And so, the processes for kind of coming back into contact with our heart, that takes courage. And oh my gosh, and it's such a gift when, we can do that more. So, I was saying under these 9 patterns, there is something true about us. There is something authentic that is not our default. It is true. And our hearts sense truth. That's another function of the heart and spiritual heart. It knows when we're being truthful to ourselves. It knows when we're lying to ourselves. If we'll just listen, it knows that how we attune. It helps us attune to what has meaning and what has purpose in life. It helps us to connect with our innate sources of compassion and caring for other people and gratitude and generosity. But those aren't always so available to us if we feel like we have to defend our hearts because, so we don't get hurt. But guess what? Defending our hearts hurts. And under any circumstances, we'll get hurt again. We will. I mean, because I feel hurt every day when I see certain things, homeless people, as I was coming to to the studio, I saw it's 18 here this morning where I live. And, people that it's like, and it wasn't that cold at the point, but my heart just hurt because I was driving by and there's this guy out in the park and kind of covered up. And I thought, oh, honey, there's a shelter. You know where the shelter is. Go to the shelter. It's like when people are in such pain because of breakups that are caused by personality differences a lot of times, when people are getting killed, when people feel like they have to use some kind of substance to be okay because they can't figure out how else to be okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on, right?
Right. But what a great point that we do that. People do that. Maybe nature says, my heart's been broken. I can't go down that road again. Right. So we build a wall. And then if it breaks again, we build the wall gets taller and taller and taller.
Thicker.
Yeah. And so pretty soon you're in a cocoon or you're in a box where you're not being open and being authentically you. And so it's okay to get hurt. It's you don't want to, but it's okay to, if it means that then you're also going to receive the joy and have the wonderful things of the heart.
Yeah. A lot of people don't believe they have the capacity to open. Some people don't question whether they have a heart at all. I've talked to so many people. I was teaching in Korea some time ago, and it was the section that morning. We were a whole morning to focus on the heart and the heart's intelligence and the heart's consciousness. And I was going through different stages of heart consciousness, from the defended heart to a more truthful heart to what I call a surrendered heart. And there were 100 people in the room or so, and it was all being translated because obviously I don't speak the Korean language, and most people didn't speak English, so it was all translated. And this young woman stood up, and she'd been really quiet during the whole retreat. And she stood up, and this is what was translated. She said, I just found out I have a heart. The room was like, people were crying, It's like, because other people, I think, resonated with that. So sometimes we feel like, the imposter syndrome is like the fraud syndrome. It is actually connected to the sense of, I don't have a real heart and I can't count on that heart. So I'm just going to pretend and shall show this person this way and for this person this way. And, but when I can do the courageous work, I'm not saying it's easy, but the courageous work of reconnecting and really feeling. I mean, I just would invite people to, as they're listening, maybe just put their fingers on right in the center of their chest, or put their hand, and just take a moment to breathe into that space and take another few breaths. It might be really hard. Even this could be really courageous. And you could give your heart a message that I'm here. You say, I'm here for you. Telling your own heart that you're here. And just see what happens. You know, this is such a tender part of our beings.
It is. It is. And yeah. So to reconnect or be connected or connect in a broader way or a bigger way uh, is beautiful. What a wonderful
Yeah.
thing. What a wonderful gift you can give
Um,
yourself, right?
oh my gosh. Do you remember the story, The Little Prince? Saint-Exupéry, sorry. And the statement that the little prince made, I think it was the little prince that made it. It's only with your heart that you can truly see something like that you can truly see. And I mean, I love that story since I was young, and I had no idea. Well, okay, what does that mean? I mean, can't you see with your eyes? But the heart has a different vision. The heart has like is perceptive, that perceives. And do you kind of know when you're with somebody and then you go, oh my gosh, I could so connect with that person, or you're in an environment and you just go, oh, I'm in love with this place. I just see the beauty. And maybe nobody else could see that beauty. I'm looking out right out this window at a big old tree without any leaves now. And, it's like this sculpture. And it's like, gosh, it's so beautiful. You can see the birds when they fly in now and land on it. And you can tell when, as we open up our own hearts, you can kind of tell when you're interacting with someone whose heart is maybe more defended. And that's no reason to defend our own hearts. Because, the work that I just love what you're about, what you're doing. Kim, it's just so wonderful, and really bringing the message of love into the world, to people's lives. And it's like, can you imagine if we were all a force for love, regardless of who was around us? What if, Kim, we decided today, I want to be a force for love, and I'm going to start with what's here.
Oh my word. Yeah. The world would be a different place, right?
Wouldn't it? And you know what? Of course, I'm an optimist, but maybe not in my lifetime, but I think love's going to predominate. I think it definitely is going to prevail in life, and even with people that are so hurt and so miserable, that the possibility is there for every one of us to experience our hearts and more of our own love and the love that just is.
And it's free.
And it's free.
It's available to everybody, and it's free. And you don't have to gift wrap it or anything. It's just it's there for you. Yeah. It's it is quite a thing. I one of the things that I believe with loving people, is it can be easy to be with somebody sometimes and try to read between the lines. Well, what are they saying? They just said this, but what are they really saying? And what is their tone? Is their tone mean? Is their tone whatever? And then with social media, kind of the same thing. Somebody writes, "Oh, my son just got student of the month." And and sometimes you're going, yeah, well, I remember that one time that kid was in so much trouble, or whatever. And love just doesn't work that way. Love doesn't read between the lines. Love believes in truth, right? And so you just take people for their word, and a couple wonderful things happen. One is you don't get jaded. Like, you don't turn your heart against somebody, or you don't fill your heart up with icky stuff, because you can just take people at their word. Just take them at their word. If they prove you wrong, they prove you wrong. But what a better way to be. But the other beautiful thing that happens is when you do that, people want to be worthy of that trust that you're giving them. And so it's a whole different thing when you're with somebody who takes you at your word. You don't want to be deceptive. There's something that happens, and you can tell because our hearts know so much more than we think they do, or we feel in different ways than we realize. And so anyway, that's my love piece of advice.
Well, I love that. And, um, there's research that's been done, powerful research that shows that, I don't know what it is, like this, the energy, we're energetic beings. We're made of energy, right? And the heart is like six, and I think I'm going to get this wrong. I think it's probably more than this. Many times, I was going to say 16 times more powerful, according to the research, but I think it's more than the brain injury, than the brain energy, not injury, energy. Yeah. So we think this is the one that knows. But our bellies have brain cells, and our hearts have their own intelligence. And it's such a profound intelligence that if we, when we choose, and we have to like say, well, why would I want to choose that? And I think this is an important question. It's like, what's my motivation? What's my why behind wanting to connect with my heart? I mean, is there something in me that there's an urge that's kind of that niggling at me, nudging me, and I kind of put it to the back because I think, well, when I finish this, or when I'm doing that in life, when I get to this point, I'll do that. And it's like, maybe it's nudging because now's the time, and is there something that you want to bring out, some aspect of yourself that you want to contribute in the world? Is there something that's calling to you? That's going to come from listening to the heart and to the heart's intelligence. This is not the same as just follow your heart. It's different because, if our hearts are defended and we're following our heart, what does that mean? Where will that lead us, right? But really attuning and listening to, and it's such a powerful guide. And I will say that I'm so grateful for this work, and this has been informed by the Enneagram, certainly. The deep living work is informed, but it's like I'm so grateful for it because I know what it's done in my life, and I know what it's done in so many other people's lives who have looked at what they really want and have taken the steps to say, I think I want to check this out. I think I want to learn more about myself. And, and here you are. You can learn more about yourself just starting right here, right now. You don't have to go out there and listen to somebody else's truth. Find, your way into your own truth. I mean, I get goosebumps for that.
Yeah, I love that. It's there. Might be a little buried. You might have to move a suitcase or two.
That's right.
Get that stuff out of the way to really get there. But what a wonderful thing to think about, for everybody, no matter how in tune or out of tune you are, if you're static on the radio or if you're the crystal clear vision, but to take the time and give it thought and listen, like you said, just be quiet and listen and figure out, who is the you inside of you, right?
Yeah. Well, the subtitle of the Deep Living book is Recover Your True Nature. And recovering your true nature. And that word recovering was used very intentionally because it's not like you have to make it up. It's not like you have to go out and find it. There's nothing to fix. You see, there's nothing to fix here. And that's how many people approach themselves. Well, I've got to fix this. There's just debris that is laying over your magnificence, your preciousness, the truthfulness of your heart. There's just debris, and it does take time. It does take courage. It takes a willingness to be with your truth, but it's already here. It's already within you. You have it. And there's a trust walk with this as well. Kind of have to trust, well, I don't know what this is going to look like. And two things can get in the way. I mean, a lot of things can get in the way of this. One is the inner critic, which I know you talked about. It's like which is part of the personality pattern. It's like the inner critic says, who do you think you are? Just leave well enough alone. No, you don't want to go there. No, like you're too far gone to benefit from it, whatever it says, crazy stuff. So beware of the inner critic, because it doesn't like change. It doesn't like change. And we can talk about that sometime too. But the other thing is wanting to know what it's going to look like within you after you've done work. So you're starting here, and then you courageously, you take your steps, you take your baby steps, you take some leaps at times. You are more in contact with your heart. You're willing to, I'm going to explore what's here. You're probably going to find some sadness. You're going to find some grief, as well as, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. Oh, I can connect with my joy, but it's like trying to know what it's going to look like in advance. You can't. Trying to anticipate the outcome, and there's no real outcome. There's no there to get to. There's the process, and trying to figure out from your head, well, I think if I do this, then I'll experience that. The heart doesn't work that way. It works in its own way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so beautiful. And why is this important to you? As a human being, listening to this, you're listening to Kim's podcast for a reason. There's something about love and about inspiration that you've been drawn to. So what is that? And what's the next step you could take?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good. And now you're giving me chills, I got to say. Because it does, it can just change so much in your life. And they have so many wonderful outcomes, right? Like getting rid of stuff that you don't need anymore, that you shouldn't have probably been there to begin with, but just kind of comes, and then seeing the beauty and seeing the goodness and the joys and experiencing those fully. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, the stuff that is now getting in the way, some of it did have value at one time, because when we were little and we felt so hurt, so unseen, of course, we didn't have any language for it. We didn't have the capacity to do anything with it, except I'm going to start protecting myself because I don't want that anymore. And so that was very useful, because when we don't have the capacity, we haven't kind of gone through some developmental stages and become adults, and still maybe feel like, I don't know if I have the capacity, but you have more capacity than you ever did before. That maybe I don't need that layer anymore. But recognize that maybe I did need it, and that was okay. So we're not judging it. We're just saying, okay. And maybe this other layer, I never really needed it. I don't know where I picked that up. I was listening to some TV show and they were talking about it, and, whatever, or you're an intuitive and you're very sensitive to other people's energy, and you pick up somebody else's blocks as well. So, they can come from a lot of different places, but some of them had value at a certain time. But now at this point in your life, you can ask, do I really need that if I want to continue my growth?
So good. So good. And, and you center so much of your work around the Enneagram, which I find fascinating. When I've taken the test, I'm a 7, whatever that means to you. And so but I have a good friend who's very much an Enneagram person who is a 5, or I don't know her number for sure, but she's sure that I must be the same number.
Oh,
She's right. Like you said really early on, like you think however you're feeling or however you see the world, everybody sees it that way and everybody
yeah.
feels that way.
Yeah. Well, I'll say a few words about identifying where you land on the Enneagram. It's like this great big map of consciousness, actually, and where do you most resonate with? So, tests can be tricky, and they can give you results that are like that. Really, yeah. What I ask is, what resonates with you about a description? Does that resonate? And actually, we have all the types, all the numbers within us, but it's what we most get attached to, what we identify with. And so what I encourage people to do is, and what I do is like, I identify with 9. And which is called the peacemaker. And I used to be very, very 9-ish. I mean, I didn't want to talk to anybody if they had any controversy with it, if there's any possibility of argument. If I had to make a choice that might offend somebody else, and that people would say, well, what do you want to do tonight? Or where do you want to go to eat? Well, whatever you want, not wanting to create waves. Okay. So, and not dealing with anger. I couldn't deal with anger. And so I've done a lot of work around those patterns. And so, yeah, 9 is kind of home base for me, but I'm much less identified with it. And it's because we can also look at what's going on underneath those patterns that's driving those patterns. And that's really where the kind of the juice is. So, it's been used kind of as a party game. It's been used for people to say, well, I'm such and such, and that's why I do this. And so it becomes an excuse rather than a doorway. And so identifying where you land is really a doorway. Like, well, where do my patterns get in my way? And I could see like, oh my God, I'm terrified of anger. So I took a mediation course and learned about mediation so I could sit in the midst of conflict and I had to breathe hard and because it felt like, oh my gosh, that was going to be the end of the world if I got into conflict, and so it's not my favorite place to be, but I have much more capacity for that. So there's just know that when we land on a particular point or type and number that seems like, gosh, that really feels like me, and I read about it, it's like, oh yeah, I know this about myself. About this part, I do I do that, or have I felt that? So it kind of opens up some doors. Oh yeah, I have. And then, well, what is available to me to begin to soften the urge to rely on a particular pattern? And it's going to mean I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to be uncomfortable. So I have to go through discomfort, Kim, to get to something else, right? To get well, yeah, I don't like anger at all. But man, I've been able to use anger at really important times, establishing boundaries, saying to someone, you need to show up for this because blah, 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 but my anger is not the anger of somebody that's really comfortable with anger, right? It shows up differently. So I would not want listeners to think, you identify with a type and then that's who you are. It's not who you are.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Because there are some things about 7s that aren't as pretty as other things about 7s.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But I appreciate that your approach is going to be way different than somebody just taking the test online. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you take the test online and you get these results, what do you do with that? Like
Right.
some of it's not going to feel right and some of it's going to be uncomfortable, right? And some of it you're not going to want to accept, or maybe you took the test funny, whatever it is. But to have you to be there to walk someone through it, through the whole process of it, rather than it's just this test you take online, right? Is entirely different. But it's, I appreciate that it shows your strengths as well as your weaknesses. So you know what to improve on, or you can recognize the patterns, like you say.
Yeah. And it's also learning what is it that's happening within me that has resulted in this pattern. Like I can look at the thing around conflict and was like, if everybody, we carry these core beliefs. Often they're not, we don't recognize them until we maybe read about them. And it's like, really? We might have to settle that. Is that true? And then because it's pretty buried, but there's a core belief about who I am or what I need to do. And like, so for the 9, it's like, we can't upset it. If you make others uncomfortable, you can't be okay as a person. Okay. I can't be okay. To be okay, I have to have this. I have to be this way. Um, and to kind of be worthy, I have to be this way. Um, and so we start looking at what's underneath the patterns and work with that. And there's actually a lot of healing that takes place, because I thought, and I've heard so many people say, I always thought, believe that belief, whatever it is, I've always thought that's how I need to be. And it's a big deal to let go of it. Like, who else am I going to be if I let go of it? Right. But then it's like, this is all part of pattern. It's all part of the personality structure. We don't really, I didn't know what the personality even was until I got involved with the Enneagram. I thought, that person has a good personality. That person has a great personality for the stage. That person, has a personality of a lawyer. I thought of it at that level, which I imagine a lot of people would relate to, rather than, our personality as a coping mechanism means that, I have my default mechanism, what I always rely on. I have certain beliefs that I rely on. I have certain, opinions that go with that. I have certain ways of acting and behaving that go with that. And so our thoughts, our opinions, our practices, our day-to-day, how we show up in life, those are all part of the pattern of the type. And so, is that really just who I am? I don't think so. Is that who any of you are, in your
Right,
audience?
right.
No.
Wow. Oh my word. You have opened up so much to think about. And I can't believe we're out of time, because I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. And because you have so much knowledge in this area and in other areas, I'm sure too, but it's fascinating to talk about it and listen. So where can people find you? Because they're going to.
Well, yeah. So you can find me, and there's a couple books I want to point out. The most recent is Underneath Your Personality. It's a little book. For some reason, I'm having trouble with this. Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't. Oh, I know what it is. Anyway, it says underneath. There you go. Underneath your personality, and the first 23 pages are available as a free download when you go to www.deepwithin.co. That'll take you to my author site. And then I want to tell you about the Deep Living Lab, which actually is a nonprofit that provides a lot of offerings, including including a typing process that was based mostly on my work. Deep Living Lab. So deeplivinglab.org, the nonprofit. And if you go there, you'll and then you sign up, you'll get a free download of, I'm not sure which chapters it is, but of the Deep Living book, Deep Living with the Enneagram, Recovering Your True Nature. And so those are two really great resources. And let me know what you think.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Roxanne, thank you so much for being here. This has
Oh,
just been great. And I go buy the book, people, buy both books and go to the sites and check out Roxanne and follow her and be there because you're going to get a lot from her. I mean, we've gotten a ton just in an hour. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you for spending this hour with us. And until next time, be blessed.